2022 has been quite a ride of a year. There have been some personal hardships, disappointments, and frustrations, but there's also been a great deal of lovely moments that balance, if not outweigh, the bad times. Reconnecting with old friends, making new friends, being involved in some great stage performances are some that come to mind, but of course, pertaining to the specific point of this video, as a gamer, it's been a swell ride, with a ridiculous amounts of highlights. One of these being my favorite series, one that has gone through a long stretch of mediocrity, finally made its big comeback, with not just one, but two kick-ass releases. One of them being the grand return of my favorite sub-series that I have wanted to see return for a long time. Now, before I talk about these things, I feel it's worth noting how far we've come, as the 2010s were not a good time for Pac-Man and his fans. Now granted, the decade did start off strong with stuff like Pac-Man Party, Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, and Pac-Man Tilt. But then, from mid-2013 to early 2015, the series would take a rather experimental direction. One that ended up having a lot of baggage. And then, after that got shit-canned, the series would then begin a gradual downward spiral, where any sense of soul or character was continuously sucked away each year until it was reduced to a soulless corporate mascot fodder, where on the gaming side of things, they shoved out mediocrity out of mostly careless obligation. I'm not saying all of these were done without any sort of passion. It's clear that with many of these, there was an attempt at trying to make something good. It's just that these games felt reminiscent of a student waiting to the last minute to work on an assignment, bashing their head against the fucking keyboard, trying to figure out how the hell to go about finishing said assignment. Championship Edition 2 is a testament to how short of a shelf life the DX gameplay style has, as Championship Edition 2's only way of expanding off of it is by making the most obnoxious and constrained gameplay loop, and is also packaged with a horrendous adventure mode. 256 is an agonizing grindfest with many cracks in its design, not to mention the copious amounts of mobile shovelware that have since then become lost media that have made up the better part of 6 years. Pac-Man Geo hurt me on a psychic level and made me question if I even like Pac-Man to begin with. Thankfully, some sessions with Arrangement 96 healed me and reminded me that yes, I do in fact like the series. Guys, I'ma be real with y'all. Ghostly Adventures was not the worst thing to come out of Pac-Man in the 2010s. If anything, it's a highlight compared to the hellish horrors from beneath the wormwood tree that came after, bringing henceforth death and pestilence to the franchise and its fans. At least I could say that the game side of GA was mostly rock solid, with Ghostly Adventures 2 being a surprisingly exceptional platformer, and for a long time it was the last good Pac-Man game. And that was a game made for 6-year-olds! But it isn't hard to see how much of a negative impact Ghostly Adventures had on the series, as at the time it did damage the series' reputation, so much so that when Pac-Man was revealed for Smash 4, people were thankful that they used his classic limb design and not his GA design, despite the fact that this was the most obvious decision Sakurai could have made with Pac-Man. I mean, come on guys, this is Smash Brothers, not PlayStation All-Stars. Granted, that's not to say that his portrayal in Smash was very good, but that's a topic for another day. Now, I do like Pac-Man 99 for its gameplay, but man, can I say I really got sick of the constant nostalgia shilling? Always milking the iconography of the original 1980 game and only acknowledging that. This Pac fan suffering reached its height with the 40th anniversary. This, with its several lackluster announcements, is what would result in the division of the fandom. It was hard to even criticize the, at the time, current state of Pac-Man without being unfairly labeled by certain parts of the fandom. I'm not gonna go into any details on what went down, but needless to say, it was rough.
Is there no remedy?
There is a remedy, but you must cut off the fountain if you will dry up the stream.
Pac-Man Museum Plus.
Nowadays, it really doesn't hurt that much anymore, for a few reasons. For one, it's very clear that COVID had a big impact in many areas, with some projects obviously being delayed because of it. And also because since then we've gotten some great stuff that has not only made up for the 40th anniversary, but also the past 6 years.
What is this? What is this?
A year after the anniversary, we saw a light at the end of the tunnel in the form of Pac-Man Museum Plus. Not only did the selection look solid, but it was also being packaged with a 3D overworld. We finally got to see Pac-Man's fantastic character design in a 3D space again, something we hadn't seen in years in an actual Pac-Man game. We were finally getting something with a sense of character and personality. And with the way this was being made, as well as with the marketing surrounding it, it was clear as day that this was a labor of love. I'm not going to spend too much time on Museum Plus, as I know what most of you guys are here for. That said, Museum Plus is an overall solid package, but it does have its issues. For one, there are certainly emulation hiccups. The sound quality on some of these older games is kinda weird, and also there are instances of input delay. And for a game like Pac-Man, where you constantly have to make the right move at the right time, that's not exactly good. I don't know if there is any fix for this, but you can at least prepare by holding down the input before you make the turn. You can work around it and get used to it, but you really shouldn't have to. I do like the look of the borders, but it would have been nice to have been able to turn them off. Also, they really botched the CRT filters. Some of the in-game cabinets aren't accurate to how they look in real life. Now, the mission system is something I do have a lot of fun with, and I'll get into the reasons why I like it later, but I will admit, some of these missions just straight up suck, mainly the ones for 256. Forcing someone to fully level up 10 power-ups in that game is enough for them to hate it. It's a game that's only good in short bursts, and constantly grinding on it is soul draining. Let my experience making that 256 power-ups ranking be a testament to that. Okay, so aside from the complaints I had regarding the missions and the input lag, most of these are nitpicks. It is rushed in certain areas, but Museum Plus is better than the sum of its parts. It has a broad selection of games, and even if you dislike 2 or 3 of these, most of the games here are top dog. But also, having games like the original Championship Edition, Battle Royale, and even Pac-In-Time become more accessible is great. I know Pac-In-Time isn't exactly popular, but it's still worthy of a re-release in my humble opinion. Despite its issues, I like the ideas it presents, and I find it nice that it's here. But what ties these games together, along with the 3D hub world, is the mission system. The mission system is so much fun because it gives you extra goals to work towards in these games, which makes for a lot of replay value. Yeah, some of these do suck, but most of them help elevate these games. It's just an extra bit of fun, and doing these unlocks goodies you can add to the hub world. Stuff like different decorations, wallpapers, statues, background music, and even other characters, like the 4 ghosts and the various members of Pac-Man's family. This effectively creates a gameplay loop of playing these various games, to do missions, to unlock accessories to customize the arcade with. Museum Plus is a game in of itself. I do take a lot of enjoyment in the whole customization aspect of the hub world, with the different combinations of placements and backgrounds to be had, all the fun formations I could put each cabinet in. Admittedly, I wish there could have been more to do in the hub world, as it would have been really neat if the other characters had text boxes and you could chat with them. Maybe they could have objectives for you. 525 Fanatic presented a similar idea in her video on Museum Plus, but regardless, what we still got with the overworld is pretty nice. At the end of the day, It was something Now Pro did put into Museum Plus as a means to tease us and hold us over until they graced us with their next big product. That would most certainly blow our minds.
I just wish, man, okay, moving around in this hubworld just makes me wish there was like some sort of, maybe just wish, maybe makes me want them to like, point is, I really want to see them make a platformer with these like controls and whatnot. I mean, I'm not even able to jump yet. This feels like Pac-Man World, and like just the basic movement already. I love the animations. It's like running animation, like there's like a little bit of like mild, subtle squash and stretch or whatever. Okay, so yeah, they're definitely working on something like
Hello, Crowns. Oh, hi, Jackie. Hi, Superstar. What's up, Smashing Star 64? I may as well take a moment to talk about something that was rather controversial when this came out. The redesign of Pac-Man's family. Because of the @Games legal shenanigans, they have to resort to these designs for now. If you want more information on this topic, I'd suggest watching Johnny's really good video talking about it. Now, it is confirmed that these characters are the same, just with different designs and names. Yes, this includes Pac-Mom, who is actually Ms Pac-Man under a different alias. This is supposed to be temporary until the whole legal stuff gets sorted out, and let's hope this gets sorted out soon. I miss the old Missy, it just isn't the same without her. Also, I'm not a big fan of the designs given to the women Pac characters. Like, goodness gracious, what's wrong with your face? They better not do the same shit to my darling Sue, cause if they do, I'll be really sad. Pac-Boy and Pac-Buddy are just Pac-Man Jr. and Chomp Chomp, with the only major change being their names. And Professor Pac is exactly the same. Of course he is. There's no way in hell Bamco would change him. He'd simply refuse. He's just an Omni-level god-tier being, capable of soloing Goku in 1 millisecond.
Nice try, Goku, but did you really think you could take on someone who survived the flaming clutches of copyright? I think not, good boy. Now get ready for my auditory assault!
I wouldn't mess with him if I were you. But I guess I said all I needed to say regarding Museum Plus. Sure, I may have overhyped it when it was revealed, but given the circumstances at the time, I'd say it was reasonable. It's solid in spite of its issues, and I'd recommend it to those who would want to get into Pac-Man, as it provides a broad look into the series. It's good, but would also serve as the beginning of something greater. After Museum Plus released, there was some speculation as to what would come next. Given certain things that were found in the game's data, we knew something was coming. But what we didn't know was that it would come as soon as it did. And oh boy, was it magnificent.
Rescue the Pac family! Head to Ghost Island! Pac-Man World Re-Pac!
Motherfucking Pac-Man World is back! What? The motherfucking Pac-Man World is back! Motherfucking Pac-Man World is back! Oh my! Pac-Man World is back! Pac-Man World is back! What the fuck, guys? Pac-Man World is back! Pac-Man World is back!
Pac-Man World is Pac-Man World, baby! Now, I always wanted Pac-Man World as a series to make a comeback. Granted, I always made it a point to say that it didn't have to be Pac-Man World, I just wanted Pac-Man's soul to return. I just wanted a good game that also had a sense of world, character, and personality. They didn't have to bring back World, they just needed to bring back that old spirit. But not only did they bring back that old spirit, but they also brought back Pac-Man World. Let it be known that in my first time viewing the reveal trailer, I genuinely teared up. In a good way, mind you. Now, before going into Re-Pac, we gotta get to know the bare basics of Pac-Man World. I do plan to give it a more in-depth review in the future, so I'm not gonna go into too much of an analysis with the intricacies of the level design or so on and so forth. It was the third actually released attempt at bringing Pac-Man into a platformer. The previous attempts had varied levels of success, but Pac-Man World simply blew them out of the water. In a way, it feels like an evolution of games like Pac-Land or Pac-in-Time, but it also delves further into the fundamentals of the original. It takes the mechanics and iconography of the maze games and remixes them into really interesting ways for a platformer. Pac-Man has moves designed to work with his ball-like shape. Mazes are incorporated into level design in clever ways. And you have platforming challenges revolving around pellets, fruit, and ghost chopping. Much like how you needed to be thorough with the maze in the original Pac-Man, here you're encouraged to be thorough and collect as many Pac dots and fruit as possible. The fruits in particular are used to open doors that lead to goodies, or buttons that open up more of the level. It's a mechanic that ties everything together and makes the level design as tight as it is. Additionally, the environments are imaginative. The various gimmicks and set pieces you interact with are fun, and the platforming is really good, especially with the way it utilizes Pac-Man's moveset as well as other general Pac-Man mechanics. Pac-Man World is awesome! But it does have a particular issue. It's pretty rough. It's not hard to find jank in 90s 3D platformers. Like, it's inevitable that these controls would feel maybe a little bit clunky, but man, it can feel nerve-wracking trying to make certain jumps here, and not exactly in a good way, mind you, especially since the ledge grab can be very unresponsive and result in unfortunate deaths. The collision detection is varying levels of fucked. Also, if you were to hit a button that activates a collectible, but for some reason you inexplicably end up dying, said collectible will disappear into the void, never to be collected unless you restart the level, and that's super frustrating. Health doesn't regenerate when starting a new level, which is cheap considering how one of the bonus levels forces you to damage boost in order to get all the fruit in the allotted time. While I think half of the bosses are good and fun, the other half are either undercooked or too much of a difficulty spike for their own good. None of these issues truly ruin Pac-Man World. It's still great in spite of them. In fact, you can work around some of these issues, but it wouldn't hurt to polish up on some things. In this day and age, a way of seeing if a series is capable of coming back would be to remake an older entry, sometimes in triples. While a brand new Pac-Man platformer is something I'd love to see the most, a remake of Pac-Man World is also an ideal way to bring back the series. Some remakes opt to simply modify the physics and apply a new coat of paint, which is fine in most cases, but Re-Pac goes way beyond. To start, Pac-Man's controls have been immensely improved. Simply moving around feels nice, as well as butt bouncing and rev rolling. A big part of this is due to Pac-Man's animations, employing the use of squash and stretch, as well as anticipation and release. It looks great and feels good, and much like the original, the sound design is great and adds to that. The butt bounce does have this delay with the first 3 times it's used in a row, but after the 3rd time you can spam that stuff to your heart's content, and it's just so fun to do butt bounce chains, bouncing from one enemy to the next, and even skipping certain platforms. The rev roll has even more of an oomph to it, and it's great to just dash around in it. They even managed to make it work better as an attack, since this time around, it doesn't have that recoil it did in the original, which could often present the risk of bouncing Pac-Man off into a bottomless pit. And it's great as an attack as it reaches enemies that are farther away at a quicker rate. Also, the Pac dot throw functions better here, as Pac-Man actually throws it in front of him instead of spiking it, which could be awkward in the original. Furthermore, Pac-Man now has an aerial flutter, This isn't the first time he's had such a move, as it was present in the 3DS version of Ghostly Adventures. But this is the first time it's used in a good game. Not only is it faithful in correcting jumps, but also combos well with the butt bounce and rev-roll jumps. It does cancel your momentum, but reasonably so, since if it did carry your momentum, it would break some of the level design in half. So his moves are better, but his power-ups are also better. The Chrome Pellet serves the same purpose, but they also added in more weighted physics, which creates a unique feel to this form, and this time, it always respawns, which helps to make certain sections less annoying. The Bomb.com pellet is still pretty sparse in terms of its use, but this time around, it turns enemies into fruit, which is so much fun. One of the biggest changes to the gameplay is what they did with the Power Pellet. Instead of simply having Pac-Man glow and chomp ghosts, here he gets big and is able to chomp ghosts and wreck everything in his path. It's really cool, but does come at a sacrifice. In the original, it could, in a lot of instances, be a challenge to simply munch all of the ghosts and rack up a combo, and it was often intermittent with the platforming. It was a great evolution of the maze game ghost chomping, and they could get pretty creative sometimes. Here, however, most of that is gone. In the original, getting a good ghost combo was really satisfying, especially with later stages making it harder. Here, it's just consistently easy. Every interaction with the ghosts is homogenized, and it really just feels like you're going through the motions. It's still fun to chomp ghosts, but I really feel like Mega Pac should have been its own separate power-up from the regular power pellets, with added sections that cater to its properties.
Also, it has an annoying habit of getting stuck in places, like, for fuck's sake, move!
That said, it is also quite the game changer in the maze subsections. Hazards are still here, and this time, you actually die in one hit. With that, this may seem worse, but the Mega Pac negates any hazard, so it counteracts and even adds a bit of strategy. Do you use the pellets to be safe, or do you use it to get ghost combos? I'd say I like what Mega Pac adds to the mazes.
The level design is very faithful to the original, but there are a few adjustments made that add a little more than what there was before. You have pack dots added into sections to make parts feel less empty. In some sections where you would have had to backtrack to the main path, they added pack dot chains that simply take you back to said path. And I'm all for additions like that! There's also those buttons that activate a stream of pack dots that are made significantly faster in Re-Pac. They certainly made accommodations to make the experience more pleasant. Though one area where I feel they may have overcorrected was with the minecarts in Maniac Mines. They were hazards that required you to use the butt bounce to overcome them unscathed. Which, it's nice to have mechanics that require utilizations of certain moves, and they made for some fun level designs. But here, they make it so you can just jump over them. Which, I get, they didn't want the second set of levels to be too hard, but it's kinda in my opinion. But this is like one instance that bothers me. I am mixed on how certain enemies were nerfed. I mean, with most of them I'm fine with it, but it's really only just the bumper cart enemy. I really preferred having to knock them off the platform with the rev roll. It was a bit wonky, but with the newer, better game feel, they could have retained this method, but make it work better. But, nah, you can just butt bounce on them. Oh well. Also, the hub world got a bit of an overhaul. In the original, it was basically a level select with extra steps, but I really liked it, especially with its sense of progression, making it feel like you're getting closer and closer into the heart of the enemy stronghold. Re-Pac replicates this in a different way, making the progression more forward, with more of a sense of elevation. And it also emphasizes that you can do certain areas out of order. I really like how it makes everything more convenient. And I also like how every other feature of the game is accessible here. Like watching previous cutscenes, selecting various Galaxian mazes, accessing the original maze game, and you can even talk to family members you saved. Though unlike the NPCs in World 2, you can't terrorize them, which is a shame, but oh well. Wait, Pac-Man, no! You don't want to mess with him! He's gonna kill you! Stop!
Oh, game over. How did I used to get out of this?
Now let's talk about score, as it's what ties everything about Pac-Man World's gameplay together. It was something you do to get more lives, but also in the US release, if you were to get a grand score of 1 million, you'd earn a magic key that unlocks doors on contact. However, since 1 million is usually a lot, I only get it after the last level, Grave Danger, which by that point, it's practically useless. However, in Re-Pac, it's 756,000 that's required, much like the Japanese release of the original. With that, on my first playthrough, I was able to obtain the key before Grave Danger. However, you can get it even sooner. Much like before, what you do in a level, as well as the overall fruit and pellets you collect, play a main factor. However, they expanded upon this with some additional factors. Not dying in a level grants you extra points. Getting successful matchups in the slot minigames grants you extra points. Also, in your Mega Pack state, getting another Power Pellet doesn't reset your combo. So, in the maze subsections, you can get multiple 1,600 combos, which greatly adds to your score. Re-Pac overall presents greater score potential, and knowing this, I got curious and saw how sooner I could get the key. I managed to get it after Chrome Keeper and before Ghostly Gardens, which is really early, but apparently from what I've heard, it's possible to get it as early as the Funhouse levels. Point is, this adds a bit of a skill ceiling to Pac-Man World's score system, and as a whole adds a whole lot of replay value. There are 2 more gameplay related things I'd like to talk about, but before that, I want to discuss some presentation aspects of Re-Pac. One thing that certainly is different is of course the visuals. What can I say? The game is gorgeous. It's vibrant and colorful. The animations are really lively. But as far as how the art direction compares to the original, well, it's a case-by-case basis on whether some parts look better in the original or Re-Pac. I will admit, there is a lot I prefer in the original over Re-Pac. Like the backdrops for the pirate levels honestly look a bit better to me. There's just a bit more atmosphere. The original just feels more cartoonish and wacky, whereas Re-Pac is a bit more toned down. And there are many things that felt lost in translation. However, Re-Pac does shine with how detailed some of these locales look. Such is the case with the space and carnival levels, as well as parts of the graveyard and factories levels. The graveyard in particular has one of my favorite creative liberties taken. In the original, the entirety of these levels took place outdoors. Here, the graveyard levels most of the time take place outdoors, but Creepy Catacombs takes place predominantly inside a mansion. Environmental details like that go a long way to make a set of levels feel varied. I can't go without mentioning other great background details, like the lighthouses in Buccaneer Beach, the giant Ferris wheel in Spin Dizzy, this part of the cavern in Maniac Mines, the boss arena for Anubis Rex, and that Earth model that adds a sense of size and scale in the space world. Details that add life to the worlds of Pac-Man World, much like in the original. The cutscenes are pretty different, and this is where I'm also kinda mixed, as once again, there are things I liked better in the original. The way the family members were kidnapped in the original were foreshadowing to the levels you were about to go through, whereas here it's mostly random. The way they introduced Toc-Man in the original was more imposing and impactful. Here it's just, alright, he's there and all, you know. And then you have the banjo blinks gibberish that the characters speak. And in all honesty, I prefer the voice acting of the original, far and through.
No, you idiots! I wanted gold streamers and red balloons! The DJ stinks, the banners are crooked, and the cake should be chocolate! You're gonna ruin my party!
Boss!
What do you want?
Pac-Man's here, on Ghost Island! The Pac-Man! I mean that pathetic fool, trying badly I might add, to impersonate you, who is clearly...
And I sure do miss this little guy. Also, Pac-Man's voice has been retconned, so no funny scream this time around. That said, on their own merits, the new cutscenes aren't bad. They still retain the Pac-Man charm to them. Also, all the stuff with Toc-Man is great too. I just love how he picks up Inky out of rage and is about to, like, shake him or something. I love the cutscenes that play before a boss fight where Toc-Man antagonizes you with his smug look, and then summons the bosses in crazy ways. He punches an angry face onto HMS Wimbag. He does this when summoning Chrome Keeper. It just looks fucking cool. He's also quite the Gemstone Crusader when summoning Anubis Rex, because, you know, he throws a gem onto him and that awakens him. Fuck it. He's really entertaining to watch, and not only are these great introductions to the bosses, but they're also great build up to Toc-Man and his eventual fight. Now, around the time the game came out, there were two specific points of contention, those being the soundtrack and the original hometek developers being uncredited. I had parts in the script talking about these issues that I'm glad I was able to cut out and replace now, as the game got an update back in November that rectified these issues. Scott Rogers and his team were the reason why Pac-Man World was as good as it was in the first place. Said team that through trial and error managed to make Pac-Man work in 3D. The artists that lovingly crafted the level designs and made the best game they possibly could with what they had, so leaving them without credit would be quite the disservice, which was an issue when the game came out. But, as I already mentioned, this has been resolved, as they were rightfully added to the credits. Also, unscripted, editor's note here. Kinda wanted to bring this up, but I do remember there being Culture War numbnuts who were actually mad at Bamco for going back and fixing this. They were mad at them because they were giving in to fan pressure and quote-unquote appealing to the mob or whatever. And it was like the goofiest, dumbest fucking thing to like complain about. Because for one, you're getting mad at developers being rightfully credited. You're being a dick. Alright, you're basically being a dick for one thing. And then second, you're completely ignorant to the fact that the reason this remake happened in the first place is because Bamco themselves gave in to the fandom's demand for like a new Pac-Man World game. I mean, come on, bro, like, come on. But yeah, putting that ironicness aside, if you're just gonna be a dick about, you know, developers getting rightfully credited, just fuck off, man. Oh man. But yeah, I'm so glad that they like went back and actually fixed this. As for the soundtrack, when the game was announced, I was excited at the possibility of finally getting the uncompressed versions of all the songs. Finally, I can use uncompressed versions of songs, like Far Out, or Down the Tubes in my videos. This wasn't the case. I've heard conflicting results regarding the ownership of the master tapes for World's OST. Regardless of that, it is a bit of a disappointment that the uncompressed versions of the original soundtrack still has yet to be released. That said, the uncompressed tracks that were in the original game made their way into Re-Pac, though prior to the update, Under Pressure was the exception for some reason, as they chose to remix that despite the uncompressed version being in the original game already. When the update hit, this changed the track back to the uncompressed original. Every other track that didn't have an uncompressed version got remixed, and prior to the update, the remixes were... let's just say pretty bad. The instrumentation was really weak, and for some reason, they had a compression filter over them. Well, with the update, these remixes got an overhaul, and it was quite the improvement. The remixes we currently have are damn good, with stronger instrumentation adding details that enhance the overall compositions. be honest, some of these even beat out the versions that were in the original. Unfortunately, it seems that they didn't notice that Far Out and Gimme Space had certain differences in their melodies. But it's whatever. With the music and the credits, these are things that should have been a part of the game from the get-go. But the fact that they listened to fan feedback and went back and fixed things is something I really appreciate. Really putting in a lot of love and care into making this the best possible experience. They even added in a jukebox to listen to the game's music. It even has the gallery and original credits themes, which is great. And... wait, what do you mean it's paid DLC? Why would something like this have to be paid DLC? That's just cheap, especially when this would have been something that was built into a game from the get-go, like in World 2. That said, am I still gonna get this and the Chrome Noir skin whenever I have money? You bet your ass I will. I mean, hey, I want to support these devs, and these are just nice to have. Anyways, this so far has been basically me praising Re-Pac, but also pointing out small little things that bug me. And there are a few more small little things that bug me to talk about. The tutorial text in Buccaneer Beach is intrusive as hell. Without even walking up to them stops the action to tell you basic info you could easily figure out on your own. You can avoid most of them, but some you can't. It's very pace-breaking. I get that they wanted everyone to know the moves, but this could have been handled better. Like how Roll 2 had the text displayed, but never interrupted the action. Also, Buccaneer Beach already does a good job explaining the mechanics in a non-verbal manner, so this just comes off as irritating. Anyways, there are other issues, but a lot of them do equate to things I prefer in the original, including the little things that were lost in translation. But, you know, I could criticize how Pac-Man's mouth doesn't flap when eating pellets, or how there isn't an unlockable concept art gallery, or how getting all the Galaxian mazes and Pac-Man letters in every level doesn't have you greeted with explosive congratulations text. I could go on about the little things that didn't make the cut, or I could continue to praise Re-Pac for how it goes above and beyond to elevate the Pac-Man World experience. Like, for example, Re-Pac's take on the Galaxian shoot-em-up and Clown Bumper Cart levels. I always liked the Galaxian level in the original. In spite of the tiresome button mashing, it was varied in level design, always kept you on your toes, and never overstayed its welcome. Re-Pac's version adds on to it by incorporating power-ups and unique formations that enemies fly in, and even adds these turrets. They also got rid of the button mashing. Yay! It's a really fun iteration of the King Galaxian level, though in comparison to the original, it does feel toned down, whereas the original had more of a hectic nature to it that I sorta preferred, as well as sound design that packs way more of a punch. I'd say both versions are equal in quality in my opinion. As for the Clown Prix level, yeah, it's no contest which is the better one here. The controls are better, power pellets are incorporated better, it has better level design, it's just really fun. Also, I love the cutscene that plays at the end. God, what a cheeky little guy. I gotta love him. This one detail made Clown Prix feel like more of a boss fight than the original. That said, I do appreciate what they were going for with the original. And last, but not least, we have the bosses. Oh, the bosses. The original had probably the best boss selection of the whole trilogy, but it was more or less 3 fights that were good, one that was interesting, and 2 there were either a ridiculous spike in difficulty or really undercooked. But despite the sporadic quality, one thing that is certain is that the bosses are quite varied, with the way they play, as well as how you take them out. Re-Pac goes on to revamp these fights, polishing up on them and fixing their design, as well as adding on to them to make them more fun and dynamic. This might be the best boss selection in a Pac-Man game. HMS Windbag is a good review of your ability to platform under pressure and your timing skills. King Galaxian is a fun bullet hell of a time, and I've already gone over Clown Prix. Now, I was really surprised at how good Anubis Rex was, especially since I had low expectations. I thought this would have been the same, but less difficult. Boy was I a fool to underestimate how far they would have gone here. There is still a degree of challenge, but it isn't absolutely ridiculous with hazards. If anything, the attacks are reworked in a way where they are fun to dodge, and the pacing of them is well done. It might be my second or third favorite boss in the game. Then there's Chrome Keeper. The original just had you using the metal pellet to safely bounce on 5 buttons, rinse repeat 8 times, with very little escalation and challenge. It's a very tedious and boring fight. With Re-Pac, however, they basically just completely redesigned the fight, in a way resembling its early concept art. You're on conveyor belts, avoiding hazards, and his occasional attack that gets crazier each phase. It's an interesting fight, and a big step up from the original Chrome Keeper, but I feel it is a bit too easy. I wish his attacks could have been more frequent or aggressive, but still, it's a pretty good boss, with some nice spectacle to be had. And now, we have the final boss, Toc-Man. This is the only boss where I can't decide whether or not the original or Re-Pac does it better. But that should really go as to say that both versions of the fight are stellar. If anything, they both have aspects that are better than their respective version. The original featured a much more intimidating fight, where Toc-Man had overpowered versions of your abilities. The environment and music had that added sense of an intense atmosphere, and he also laughed at you anytime he damaged you, which added on to that the two of you were really going at it. Though it is a bit simple, and the family helping you out did make it a bit too forgiving. Now, with Re-Pac, it isn't as intense. He doesn't attack you with the same level of severity, and he doesn't even laugh at you. However, the fight taking place in the party room is a great touch. But also, like with the previous Re-Pac iterations of the bosses, the spectacle of this fight is incredible. Having a lot more means of attacking you. In addition to the 2 of his attacks being carried over from the original, he also fires bullets out of his fingers, he tries dashing towards you, he has cannons, firing cannonballs at you, and he pulls out the power-ups that you used throughout the game and uses them against you. He uses the chrome pellet, he eats a power pellet, and gets really big. Like, damn, this shit is crazy. Boy, I so wish they didn't spoil this in the game's fucking promotional material. But seriously, this is one hell of a fight. It also has a really raw as hell finisher. Now, I know QuickTime events in a Pac-Man game is weird, but it's just the final boss. Not to mention, Kirby games have done this and they can get away with it, so why not Pac-Man? What's also great about this fight is that it can be made even harder. Unlike in the original, you don't need to save all the family members to get to the final boss, which means that those who you don't save won't be there to provide health for you, which means you can do this 3-phase gauntlet of a final boss without the aid of any health pickups. Let me tell you, it's a fun challenge, and really got me to learn how to dodge and handle his attacks. With this, for the first time, a final boss in a Pac-Man World game isn't superseded by a previous boss. It actually gave you a good incentive to do the game any percent as well. This also leads into my last subject regarding Re-Pac, the 2 different endings that it depended on whether or not you saved all your family members. Not saving the family members results in a remake of the original ending, where Pac-Man eats Orson, also the ghost for your family, and they celebrate back at Pac-Man's house. It's effectively a good enough end to your quest, though essentially in your vengeful quest to mercy chomp Orson, you're leaving your family to suffer in their cages for the duration of the game. Obviously, the game doesn't play into this, but it is funny to think about. In essence, this could be considered the shitty person route. However, If you do go through the effort of saving the family, you do get an ending where Pac-Man forgives Orson, which is honestly adorable. The family celebrates their victory on Ghost Island, and the ghosts join in on Pac-Man's birthday. The original game's ending is a classic, but this one is also satisfying. After that are the credits. We Are Pac-Man is a banger. Being the first time a Pac-Man game gets a vocal theme, it's a really damn good one, and nicely emblematic of the character and series. It just screams, Pac-Man is back, and I love it.
Stomach's rumbling, I'm running on empty. I feel my instincts kicking. I started off by foot to 1 foot forward. Now I'm flying full speed ahead. Waka waka, oh, jumping everything. And finally my head is clear again. Ideas are coming to me. So come on, time to eat up. Let's start this party.
So that's Pac-Man World Re-Pac. And I can't stress this enough. It's a damn good remake, and easily the best the series has gotten in years. As it stands as a remake, it does justice to the original game, while also elevating many aspects of it. However, I will say it doesn't outright replace the original, at least in my opinion. There are just things I do prefer in the original. I'd say they both have their pros and cons. Overall, I'd say they are equal to each other, though I can see most people preferring Re-Pac. Objectively, it is the definitive version, but whether or not you're playing the original or Re-Pac, you are playing Pac-Man World. A great game, though we can thank people like Scott Rogers, Gil Colgate, and the rest of the hometek team for making as good as it is, and we can thank Bandai Namco for listening to us and bringing Pac-Man World back, and we can also thank Now Productions for hitting it out of the park with a remake that does good by this classic. Oh, how refreshing it is. We finally got a bigger release. One with Pac-Man's soul and character finally back. Not to mention, the Pac-Man World identity came back with it too, even if it is just with a remake so far. So this also begs the question, what's next? I really want to see the Pac-Man World train continue onwards in some capacity, mostly with something brand new. However, I am aware of the desire to see a World 2 Re-Pac. It is something I see as a realistic next step, and yeah, I'm totally down for that. The game is really good as is, but a souped up version of that would be amazing. It would create a great foundation for something new. That said, beyond that point, I would prefer we take a break from remakes and do something new with the World Series, or Pac-Man platformers in general, to expand on what can be done with a Pac-Man platformer in this day and age. Pac-Man World just needs its Sonic Mania, and it needs its Crash 4. I really just want to see Pac-Man World 4, or something akin to that. I really wouldn't like to see the series get stuck in a constant loop of remake after remake. By that point, we'd just be repeating the 2010's issue of milking the 1980 original, just in a different form. But putting all that aside, I am still really happy with Re-Pac. I'm happy that we're finally getting bigger projects with more character and passion, as opposed to the mediocrity from before. We are out of the Dark Age. Hopefully this can continue forward, and I'm excited to see where things go from here. But until then, I have to pack it up for now. And until next time, I will see you all later.